Hello and welcome back with another session with the MicroStrategy tutorial. We're going to create a drill map, show you how drill maps interact with different templates and with different attributes. The idea here is to show you how to design drill maps from inside reports and templates and stand in a separate standalone editor. Both of them serve the same thing. They're a little bit confusing. Why would they have a standalone and why would they be able to edit from within a report? And I'll show you how you can take advantage of that difference and how you can use both ways to make it work for you. There's a lot more detail that we're probably not going to go into, but feel free to ask me any questions about specifics. I will go over the basics, the fundamentals, and the how, and I'll demonstrate as much as I can within the next 10 minutes or so. Okay, so the first thing I want to show you is creating a drill map from scratch. There's two ways to go with this. We could either do it from inside a report or standalone. So I'm going to show you the generic, creating a new drill map as a standalone. I will right click in the drill map area or any area I just choose to, and I'm going to select the drill map. Once you open, you'll see the origin. It's showing you the source. Obviously we don't have a source because we created a new drill map from scratch. If you are creating it from a template report, you will see your template report here, and we'll visit that in a couple of minutes. So the first thing I want to do, I want to create a drill path. Up and down is by clicking on the attribute. You have the option of going up and down across a template. Up typically means up a hierarchy, okay, or up a business logical model. Down means down, meaning more detail. So up means less detail, down means, so something you can think of if you're at a city level, up would be at a region level. Down would be, for instance, at a zip code or street level or division. Across would be going from one dimension to another. For instance, if you were doing something like regions, and you were looking from one region and you want to go across, instead of going from a region dimension, you're going to go to a product. So let's say you were looking at revenue by region, and you wanted, by choosing a region, specific region, then you drill across to a product to see how does that product perform in that specific region using the same metric that you are looking at. So it's just a different way of looking at the data. And then the template, which is totally changing your report while you're drilling. So let's go and create something simple. Let's do the up. Let's use the geography. Okay. So I'm going to go and up. Let's do up by. Let's do country. Okay. And let me do the down. Let's see if something else makes center. Let's just use call center. Okay. Select it first, call center. Across, just like the example I was giving you, let's go across from region to a product. Let's just do it at a category level. Okay. This may not work, depends on the data you have, so I'm just giving you a generic example. We'll test it out and verify. And then template. There's a completely different template. These are pre-built templates in the tutorial, but you can create your own templates. I will have another video about how to create templates, but for now, just select a pre-built template if you have one. Okay. Now what I did is I just selected. I didn't talk about properties yet. I'll cover the properties very quickly. Let's talk about these properties. For these three is all the same. This one has separate properties. So by attribute levels or directions in your dimensions, you will be able to do the following. The path, when you're drilling, when the user is drilling, he will see this listed. You could either select the name, which means whatever the name of this attribute, it'll automatically use, or you can specify country, my choice, anything you want to call it. So the user, when you type this in, will see this, will not see this in their option to drill up. Okay. Typically, for consistency, you might want to use this unless you have a custom reason to use something else. Like if you're not calling it country, you're calling it state, for instance. Whatever. You can have a description. It's just like a tooltip that'll explain what you're drilling to. Okay. So here we're going to use the same name. So it's going to be country. It's going to call country, and I'm going to call it go to a country. Okay. And here's the property list for this drill. Okay. So here you can set the name, country drill. You can keep it empty. I recommend keeping it empty. There's no point at this for you to set a name. Just keep it empty, which means it'll show up as up rather than the name that you want to customize. Priority. This means they will right click. This means they will one click. This is right click. And this is only when they choose custom or advanced filtering will they see the low. So typically you're going to do medium or high. I don't think you're going to use the low much. Okay, so medium or high. High means click. You're only going to be allowed one high priority for these three. So for instance, let's set country to high and go to call center and set it to high. See what happens. You're going to warning. You must set high importance. You have set high importance to more than one drill path. Only the first will be treated as a high importance path. So it'll keep it as high, but because you have multiple, this one will be treated as high and this will be treated as medium. So for consistency, make sure you only have one high, meaning that when you click for a drill, you will go to this one, the high. This one requires a right click and choice. I'll demonstrate it to you once we're done with this drill map. Okay. Apply user filter, true, meaning if the report has a filter, for instance, the report is filtering on a country, you want your drill result to also filter on country. You want to apply the report filter. So here, the report filter is whatever the report has in its filter definition. And I think I misspoke. This part is using the filter and that you select. So when you drill on, for example, USA, it'll pass the USA in the filter. This part is saying whatever the report was pre-filtered. So if it was filtered for the year 2011, it'll keep that true, meaning it'll also, the result will be filtered by 2011. Sometimes you don't want that to happen. Sometimes you want the user, when they click on a certain country, you don't want that to filter the result. You want it to return all the country's data. That might be a special case. Or you might have a case where you're filtering by a year, but when you drill, you don't want that year to be taken in consideration. So you could ignore that and say false, for instance. Notice everything else changes automatically because they're kind of associated. Alright, so if I keep the report filtering, I can also stop it and include it or keep it as default, which is a yes. I can also add an additional filter, meaning I can also add more filters other than the filters that exist. This filter will only take effect if I drill on call center in this case. Okay, so I can go ahead and select you can select a prompted filter or a fixed filter or whatever you want. Okay, so this is an additional option. It's rarely used, but but notice if I do this, if I say false here, I no more get that ability to turn on and off the filter, but I still have the additional filter option. Okay, typically you keep these as true and you keep this as default. Okay, keep page by and keep base template, meaning whatever you have in your page by, whatever you have in your template will either be inherited in your result or not. Typically everybody leaves them as false. However, sometimes your design requires that the page by in the parent and the target be the same. Here you enable it, and what it does, it kind of syncs. So when you drill, it also tries to sync the page by for you. The downside of this, you have to be careful about it, is if you're doing extra filtering, things will change, which page by would be synced. You might not have control over your data, so you got to be careful about when you sync these. But the traditional is you're keeping everything false and you're keeping everything simple, meaning you drill, you see what you get. There's not much syncing and manipulation going on, but you have the option to customize your drill. And finally, I want to talk about this one. This one is critical. This one is the template. This one is taking you from one report to a different report completely. A template is nothing but the layout of a report. So in this case, we're going to drill into a different report. And look at this. You can keep the filters and report filters inherited, meaning passing them from one report to another. Typically we do that. Sometimes we don't for other reasons. But you also can include other filters if there's a reason, like security filter. And notice this, you have a display mode. Do you want it to display the result as a grid, graph, or both? And here's a critical one, is VLDP. Do you want it to inherit all your specific SQL properties? Sometimes you do. Sometimes, for instance, your parent is allowing for outer joints and you want the target to also allow for outer joints. You might want to inherit your VLDP, but you got to be careful. You got to know what you're doing before you inherit things like that. And similar, do you want to sync your page bys? Do you want to keep your base template, or you want it to be modified? In this case, whether you choose true or false, you're not going to see much of a difference because you're drilling into a new template anyways. Okay, so here's the name of my drill map, my new drill map. Okay. And notice I still haven't linked it to anything else. So what do? I associate it with, let's just choose a report as our source. I don't know if there's a report that's ready for us, but let's do something by subject area. Maybe let's look at sales profitability. Let's just do electronics revenue by region. If it doesn't work, I apologize. I'll try another report. Notice here when I selected this report, it shows me the local template and everything else. So one choice I could say local template, which means I can drill from the template to these different options, and I'll show you how that works. Or I want my drill map associated with a specific attribute, meaning this would be your selector. This would be the instigator of your drill. Let's for starts keep this as region only. Okay, and see what happens. Notice now it's linked, and all these are bold, which means they have nothing associated, but the region is associated with my new drill map. Okay, so that's how you know. Pretty much I'm done at this point. So let me save all and close, and then go test my electronics revenue report. And here's where it's trying to save it as, because it's new, and you can choose, which folder you want to save it in. Let's just keep it in the basic and keep the name as I chose. So here it is, my new drill map. Okay. Now I created a report that depends on it. I can either go and look for my report, but I can right click and look for dependents. And there it is, and I'm just going to run it from here by double clicking. Alright, great. So this is a report that has a bunch of images which we don't really care for, so I'm going to make some modification here. Let me remove them. So it's just pulling back a bunch of images, and we'll just remove them. Okay, just want to see numbers. Great. So here's my report with a bunch of numbers. Again, nothing associated to our drill map at this point, but remember we associated region. So let's go and right click on region and see what we get. We get up, and it's highlighted or bold, which means it's a high priority, meaning if I just double click here, and notice it's blue. It looks like a URL link. So if I double click on any of these, it's going to go by the up and by country, and here it is, USA. Okay, just like I expected. But I still can do the medium. Remember the medium drills. I'll choose central. I can go down into call center. I don't know if there's any data there, but let's give it a shot. And there we go. We have 2 call centers associated with that one region. Okay. And finally, let's see other directions category. See if there's makes sense. And there it is, electronics. And it's showing us the revenue. And finally, right click and drill. Okay, let me choose central, right click and drill, and to template, time analysis. Alright, so it allowed us to drill from one report to another. Okay, just to touch on this information quickly, I can drill from the selection or from everything. So if I highlight the parent or the header and I right click, I can drill in the same direction. What does it do? Instead of passing the one item, it'll pass all the items in my report. Okay, so let me go ahead and drill on region, and let me drill up to country. See what happens. USA, but it's passing all these. How do I know what did it pass? I go to the SQL view, and let me see what's going on here in the SQL. So the SQL is saying, I'm going to run at the country level. I'm going to bring your revenue. I'm also going to pull the year, and I'm pull the revenue. Sorry, the revenue, the year, and the country. And I'm going to pull it from a bunch of tables that I'm joining on, the different lookups for the month, for the country, etc. And here's what matters for these regions: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and category ID 2, which is electronics. This one is embedded. This is the pre-filtered. Remember I said if you say allow the filter to pass as true, this is the part that covers that, and allow the user filter, this is the part that covers the allow the user filter. Okay? Now, let's say I don't want it to stick to the report filter. I want to eliminate that. Well, what do? Let me close this. I can either go back to the drill map and edit it, or from within the report, I can edit the drill map. Now, it's exactly going to pull up my drill map. When we go to region, look what I'm going to say. I'm going to say, well, when you go to country level, let's say, I don't want you to pass the report filter. What is in the report filter? In this case, electronics. So I still want to pass the regions, but not the report filter. And I hit OK. Saved. Okay. Let's just drill on one region and see what happens. Okay, let's look at the SQL. And there's the region. When I drill on all regions, this is just an optimization. I'll show you what happened. Now we were expecting to see the list of all regions. Okay, we're expecting to see the list of all regions. No matter, the SQL is optimized, and that where clause got dropped with the different regions because you included all the region elements. Okay, so just I wanted to clarify that if you don't see stuff like that. So that's by drilling by the header. Obviously, if you drill by one item at a time, you will always see that where clause included. In the template, let me just touch on the SQL of the template, and let me look at this. The SQL of the template has nothing to do with the SQL of the parent, other than it passes whatever you enabled it to pass. In this case, it's passing the region selections, it's passing the category, which was electronics, and it's passing the region ID that you drilled from. Notice that you're going to say, well, it's 6 and 6. What's going on? Well, I'll tell you what's going on. Because you're drilling into a template, it's doing two things. It's remembering your selection, and it's remembering what was in the parent report. Now this could be redundant, but that's how MicroStrategy works. The same, if you're telling me to remember what the user selected and what the report did, I'm going to do it twice when drilling to a template, just because it's assuming that you're trying to intersect it. If you want one but not the other, you say, I only want this, I don't want this redundancy, then you remove the report filter, okay, and you just keep the user selection filter, vice versa, whichever one you want to see. If you just want to see category, you remove the user selection. If you, depending on how you want to, so depending on what you move, or you move both and you only see this, that's how you can control what MicroStrategy passes to the template and what it doesn't pass to the template. You can try them all different combinations, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So I just want you to be careful about, what you're passing, what you're not passing. What you think you're passing might not be what's actually being passed, depending on those filter settings in your drill map. Okay, I'm going to close this, and I'm going to conclude today this drill map from reports to different templates and attributes with talking about the empty drill map. The empty drill map usually is associated with metrics. So I'm going to, on this metric, there's nothing. I'm going to associate it. I'm just going to click here, associate it with something called the empty drill map. The empty drill map is empty. But what it does for you, I'm going to close this, I'm not going to save it. What it does for you, it prevents drilling from a metric, okay? It prevents you from drilling to a metric. And that's usually critical because drilling from a metric really doesn't make sense. You want to drill from an attribute. So what happens is MicroStrategy allows you to associate an empty with anything you want, including metrics, such that the user at runtime cannot just go ahead and drill. This will be disabled. They will not be able to drill on these different metrics, okay? So that's a good thing to know. Furthermore, just to conclude, what if I want to remove my drilling, okay? Well, you can't, if you remove one of these from here, so I can go ahead and remove this. This will modify the drill map, which could be associated with multiple reports. So when you modify here, you're modifying for all. But if you just want to remove the association for this report with this drill map, you have to manually remove it from here, and it's gone. It goes for all the different paths for this drill map. And now when you OK it, that drill map will no more be associated with this report. Okay? So I'm going to save and close this. I'll show you what I mean. Here's my drill map, and if I look at dependents now, I have nothing associated with it anymore. Okay? And I'm going to delete it because there's no need for it. Usually you don't want to keep drill maps that are not associated, so it's a good habit to remove them if they're not associated. And that concludes our drill map lesson for today.